So I have a hand from Thunder Valley Casino.
Okay. Thunder Valley Casino. Okay.
Um, This is indoors, seven-handed with plexiglass and whatnot,
Okay.
sanitation. Seven-handed. The main villain in this hand is a loose passive rec player.
Okay.
He has made some suspect raises pre-flop. For example, if it's limp 2 or 3 ways to him, it might raise his big blind to $15 with 8-7 off, for example.
Okay.
So I consider that quote unquote for fun raise. So anyway, that was my read on him at the time. I am under So I am in the low jack. So under the gun limbs, and I'm in the low jack, and I have 6 of clubs, 6 of diamonds. I make a rare over limp. I might limp with 7s and raise with 8s plus. So this is like, on one hand, I might just limp.
6 of diamonds, 7 of diamonds?
No, six of diamonds, and 6 of clubs, 6 of diamonds.
Oh, my bad. Oh, pocket sixes. Okay, so kind of like a small pair. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
small pair,
Mm-hmm.
smallish. So anyway, the hijack is next to act. He's the main villain.
Mm-hmm.
He makes a small raise to $20,
Okay.
and then I interpret that as for fun, like not a serious hand.
This is what, 5-5 1K cap or something like that?
It's a 2-5 blind, 1K cap.
2-5 blind. Okay. 1K cap. 1K buy-in cap. Okay. So yeah, kind of a
I
small
don't
raise
remember.
over 2 limps, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
right. Anyway, so loose aggressive cutoff calls,
Mm-hmm.
button calls, big blind calls, under the gun calls.
Okay.
So
And what's
we
the
got
effect
5
of
of the.
stacks here in the hand, or what will it be
Yeah,
effective?
sorry, I have 620. That's my stack.
Okay. 620. So it looks like it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ways.
No, it's 6 ways.
6 ways.
One
Okay.
person did, I think, small blind folded. But
Okay.
anyway, I consider a squeeze with my hand. I just opt to call for set value.
So you actually considered back limp re-racing because of the small raise.
I mean, with
That'd be
my
interesting.
read, I mean, I
Yeah.
felt I had the best hand, or I could get 7s, 8s to fold, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I said when people aren't necessarily like comfortable 3-betting pre-flop goes way back to the beginning of beginners. Like one of the things that you can actually hop on is when people size really small in multi-way situations pre-flop, they're usually not sophisticated enough to like do it as a sort of a reverse type of thing. But when it goes limp and then somebody makes it 3x, you're pretty sure, even though here it's 4x, that it's not a strong hand. But okay, 6 ways, pot's like about 120.
Yeah,
Yep.
right. So the flop comes a 7 of clubs, 6 of hearts, 4 of spades.
Okay, so you flop middle set, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
right. So anyway, it checks to me, and I take no chances. I take the betting lead right away, and I bet 50.
So you bet into the pre-flop raiser.
Yeah, I know. I'm bad positioning, but yes, I did bet
Yeah, I
into
mean, I
the
don't mind
pre-flop
that.
lead.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't mind that at all. I mean, talk about trying to develop, a leading range here on a board like this against a guy that doesn't look like he's got that strong of a hand. I mean, I really don't. I really don't mind the play. I mean, I used to do this as a default, but sort of poker has changed a lot where people will just naturally check, but I don't mind that play at all. So you bet 50, okay?
Yeah, so I bet 50. The hijack calls and the aggressive cutoff calls. So pot's now 270-ish.
So the
I'm
guy that
hoping to pay
raised small calls with people behind him. That's interesting.
yeah.
Because you
He
wouldn't think
called,
that he's
hijack
calling with
calls.
like king, queen off or some shit like that, right? On the
Yeah,
flop.
right.
Yeah.
You wouldn't. You had to connect with the board in some way,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You had to.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so I'm trying to fade a 3, a 5, an 8, a 10. I'm trying to evade a lot of cards. I'm intent to size up on the turn. So anyway, the turn is a beautiful jack of hearts.
Jack of hearts, okay.
Yeah. So I size up this time.
Okay.
I bet at 180 into that.
Okay.
And then hijack calls pretty quickly.
And cut off folds?
Set up folds.
Okay. So now we're
So my
looking at
read
a
of,
pot of 360 on here. So it's like, what, 630, something like that, right?
yeah, on the river there'll be 630. So my read of the situation was there's actually a decent chance he has a made hand. Like a two pair hand, and maybe bottom set, maybe 7-6, jack 7 suited, something like that.
Yeah.
That was my read, I guess, at the time. But anyway, I wasn't worried about pocket fives, for example. I think they would have.
You think they're going to fold off here on the turn?
Yeah, based on my sizing, it usually gets rid of draws pretty quickly. So he'd have to have a really good flush draw.
Yeah, I was going to say, Garlin, I mean, one of the things people, again, just sort of like developing their hand reading skills first starting out is that in a situation like this, usually you think about it when you're the pre-flop raiser, but here you're leading, so you're taking the lead, so it's kind of similar. When somebody continues to call on a card that doesn't really connect with the board on the turn, which is inherently, an overcard, like a dynamic overcard, you definitely have to start looking at backdoor flush, and in this case, backdoor heart possibilities. So you take a look back at the board, you look at the board distribution, it's 7 of clubs, 6 of hearts, 4 of spades, and now the turn's the jack of hearts, and you're like, all right, well, what would make sense here for a flush draw? And it would be like a hand like 5x of hearts, which would be open-ended on the flop, picks up backdoor hearts, 7x of hearts, some sort of straight draw like 8-9 of hearts, 8-10 of hearts, something like that. The higher the board, the more you can actually identify this too, because sometimes there are situations where a guy will overcall the flop, like it will go call, call, and the backdoor flush will come in, but the only way that someone would be able to have the backdoor flush is if they had bottom pair on the flop and there was no straight draw, so it doesn't make sense. But here, it's definitely a possibility. It's also interesting, too, that the hijack is the pre-flop raiser who raised kind of small, which kind of sort of like, I would think, kind of like throws out a lot of overpairs, but I would be keenly aware here of the backdoor heart draw.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, let's go to the river. River is the worst card in the deck. It's the 3 of hearts.
Wow, 3 of hearts. So the 5x comes in, and now we've got the backdoor heart draw here coming in too.
That's right.
So the final board is 7 of clubs, 6 of hearts, 4 of spades. Garlin leads with middle set after limping pre into the pre-flop raiser. Pre-flop raiser calls, cutoff calls, turns the jack of hearts. Garlin bets 180. Pre-flop raiser calls, cutoff folds. Pot's now 630. River's at 3 of hearts. Now, in a normal situation where you had maybe limp called with a small pair, or you called out of the big blind, and it was a normal sort of raise pre-flop, but not one of these bullshit raises, I'd be like, oh, well, this guy probably has an overpair here. So I would still think that I'm good in a spot like this. Here, with that little bullshit raise pre, him sticking around on flop, like I said, if we don't think he's got overpairs here that much because of the bullshit raise, it's kind of dicey / interesting here. I mean, here you get into a situation where it's like, okay, well, obviously, I did this video on block betting too. So there's really no reason to block bet unless you can get called by worse. Obviously, you could get called by worse here. If he has some sort of smallish overpair like 8s or 9s or something like that, I would feel much more comfortable continuing to go for value against a standard situation with a pre-flop raiser that used standard sizing that's call down would indicate like an overpair. But here, it just doesn't seem all that likely. Now, again, one of the things I talk about too in live poker is I really dislike check calling on the river when I don't know what to do. People are like, oh, check call river. And they're like, why are you check calling river? The 2 reasons to check call the river, right, is to induce a bluff, where a guy's going to bet some sort of busted draw. And if you had bet yourself, he's just fold, so you don't get value from the bluff. And then the second one, which isn't that common at the live low stakes, is to get a guy to value own themselves own themselves. And that what that means is that you're checking, they bet a hand for value that they would otherwise fold to your bet. That's a rare case. I don't know if either of those situations are really present here. So I could even sometimes see check folding as an option to large sizing. If you think the guy's really wild and maybe he does have an overpair, maybe you can, kind of blockish bet here, 150 to 175. It looks like you've got about 370 left, so it's going to be kind of dicey here. Like if you bet, say, 150 and he jammed, that's 930. The pot's going to be like 1150, 220 for you to call. That's some pretty enticing odds, but you're going to have to find the bluffs,
Mm-hmm. Right.
So what did you do?
You bought bet small or check to evaluate, basically, is what you're thinking.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I made a rash decision. I didn't really pay too much attention. I had a moment of weakness because I had committed myself in my mind. I moved in.
I don't think moving in can be correct, though, because if you take a look at the hands you're trying, what are you trying to get? What are you going to get called by here?
That's 2 pairs, that kind of thing.
Like a flopped, well, you block a lot of the flop 2 pair, like a 7-6, right? Like a suited, the connecting hand that would be raising maybe like 7-6 suited. You block a lot of that. Jack 7, that's like one specific weird sort of hand. And I fear that a lot of the other hands, maybe if he's got 8s, 9s, 10s, are just going to fold out now because 5x gets there, hearts get there, and you're going to run into some hearts. So you moved in for what, 370? Is that about right?
Yeah, I moved in for 370.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
and
it was a mistake. Anyway, he tanks for like a minute and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he called.
Okay.
He had 7-6 offsuit.
Wow. So
it worked out for me.
Wow, that's unbelievable. So so this is the hijack, right? Hijack has 7-6 off. That's pretty funny. And the other thing too is what you can look at sometimes too, and I know you know this, Garlin, but just for some of the viewers, when we're taking a look at sort of, I just talked about how you sort of dissect the possibility of a backdoor flush draw. If you were trying to look at one specific hand, say you didn't think he would raise pre with 7-6 off, but it would only be 7-6 suited, right? You've got the 6 of clubs in your hand. The 6 of hearts is on the board. So then you can also look at the 7 on the board. It's actually the 7 of clubs. So there are actually 2 combos, if I'm looking at this correctly, of 7-6, 7-6 of, well, you've got 6 of clubs and 6 of diamonds, 6 of hearts is on board. So the only one that's left is the 6 of spades. And then you look at the 7 and it's a club. So there's one combo, 7-6 of spades that's out there. But if the 7 of spades was on the flop, he couldn't have any 7-6 suited. So that's how you look at the distribution of sort of the hand. So you were good, but in retrospect, you think you misplayed it.
Yeah, I made a mistake, but I benefited from it.
Yeah.
So
if you block the river, you're going to get called, right? And I think that's really what the play is.
Yeah, and if I check, he's going to check back.
Yes, he's going to check back. Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's why I'm not a huge proponent of necessarily doing that. But thank you very much for the call, Garlin. Appreciate it. If you like what you've seen here, please hit the subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this call-in hand, hit the like button down below. To check out crushlivepoker.com, click on the link in the description. Use the code YTA300 to get the first 30 days for free.